Evolution is now known as a change in a population over time, a change in the alleles of a population over time. Alleles were not understood in the time of Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin wasn't the first one who knew and understood evolution. It has been understood ever since humans have been able to write information down. Charles Darwin, however, did expound on it tremendously. He used information that was available from farm animals. He used information that was available from experiments that he did. He used information that was available from other writers, and he put it all together to make it make sense. He still didn't know what was causing it. He didn't know what an allele was. He didn't know that these were the genes that caused the coding of certain proteins. However, he did know what the consequences of evolution were. So he described evolution. Evolution, from his description, has become what we know of as the theory of evolution. A theory is an explanation of what occurs. We know evolution occurs. Everyone knows evolution occurs, even the liars that claim it doesn't. Some of them go so far as to claim there's only one type, or they say there's micro and there's only micro and there's no such thing as macro. Macro is the same. What kind of an idiot would say evolution occurs and then say evolution doesn't occur? It's a change. Over a period of time, the changes can increase to the point that they cause the beginning of a new species. But the new species has to come out of the old. Species give rise to others. Sometimes the old one remains, and sometimes it gets killed out by the new one that is a better competitor. But it happens. It's been known to happen. It's been published about happening. The Bible is nothing but a book of evolution. I don't know how anyone can quote the Bible and then say that evolution doesn't occur when the whole book is about evolution. That's all it is about. It's completely about evolution. It takes an idiot to read it and not understand. Evolution is change in a population over time. That's what occurs. Now, the guy named Lamarck, who preceded Darwin, he had the idea that this happened because animals were trying to change their situation by stretching and stretching or something in the environment, and he was kind of right. Environments do impact what survives and what reproduces. The thing he didn't understand was how this occurs. He thought desire to change would change. And of course, something with a short neck that needs to browse high up in the tree in order to survive wishes it had a long neck, if it could think about it. That doesn't make giraffes get a long neck. What made them survive to have long necks was the fact that the ones with the longer necks were able to survive when the ones with the shorter necks weren't. They had the allele for a little bit longer neck that gave them a little bit of a survival advantage. That survival advantage allowed them to have more offspring. Those offspring then overtook the population. There are still antelopes that have shorter necks that are closely related to the giraffes, just like other species. There's a whole range of evolution in front of us right now, with many, many, many species. Not all. Some of them have killed out their ancestors by outcompeting them, because one of the solid things in biology is that no two organisms can occupy the same niche for an extended period of time, because eventually one will outcompete the other and put it into extinction in that particular niche. That's evolution. And if the ancestral stock is not as capable of survival, then it doesn't survive as well. The dugong and the manatee are almost identical, except The manatees put the dugong into extinction in the Americas by outcompeting them. Dugongs are still around, manatees are still around. Both of them are on the verge of extinction now because another animal is taking over most of their habitat with an extensive population, which is varied also. All of the old farmers, all of the ranchers, all of the people who used to have family farms, they all understood evolution. You never heard the ancient farmers from Darwin's time on up complain about evolution. Farmers knew, ranchers knew. They knew evolution occurred. It was part of what they did when they did selective breeding. Oh, you want to call it artificial selection? Yeah, it's still selection. It's still evolution. It's what they did when they bred for certain dogs. It's what they did when they bred for certain cats. It's what people have done since they've been messing around with things. Darwin looked at the varieties of pigeons. He looked at the varieties of cabbage. All of them came from a common ancestor. All of them were the result of selection by either nature or by humans. And all of them were the result of evolution. He did his own work. He did lots of work. People who complain about Darwin and don't know what he did and don't know how hard he worked and don't know the stuff he came up with are just being complaining idiots. Because Darwin spent his life searching for things. He searched through literature. He wrote things and he wrote things and he wrote things, and everything he wrote about he either had experimented on or he had cited somebody else who had done the experimentation. And his work was all cited. It was all referenced. You could look up anything. You can still look up anything that he said and anything that he referenced. And you can still do the experiments that he did. If you stop complaining and get off your lazy butts, if you start trying to do something to learn, you might learn. If you do things that Darwin did, he went from when he was a child, he was searching through beetles, looking at the different varieties of beetles. He went on the Beagle, toured the world. As a naturalist, by the way, they didn't have scientists back then, they called them naturalists. And he was looking at all of the things out there, which he looked at lots of things and he kept lots of records, and he worked and he worked and he worked. And they say when he got to the Galapagos, oh, he looked at the finches and he looked at more the mockingbirds and noticed the difference between them a lot more than he did between the finches and the tortoises. The finches were discovered to be different when he got back to England and they started categorizing all of these things, and then he regretted not having done a better job with them when he was there. Still, he did. He went back over them and he determined that they had speciated between the islands. He did very good work, and he wrote lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of information about what he did. And he did lots of experimentation. And he's the guy who discovered that barnacle males are actually parasitic of the females. And he discovered several different species of barnacles. He discovered where their relationship was. He discovered the way some things develop. And he wrote about it. He did work. He did intricate work. He worked for hours and hours. He worked himself silly. And then he wrote things. And he wrote things about things that evidence supported, not some fantasy that he had that he could go and make something some way because he wanted it to be that way. He didn't look for things that he wanted to be that way. He tried to find the evidence to support what he was saying. He looked for things, he looked for truths in nature, which is what science does. It looks for evidence to be found in nature. It doesn't go around and make something up and say, I made this up, now I have to support what I made up. It doesn't go and say, oh, some ancient writer made this up and they really thought it was so, and they wrote something here and there and 50, 60, 70 different people wrote different things that contradict one another. And because they wrote that a long time ago, and because they copied from the Sumerians and the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the people, the Zoroastrians and the Egyptians and the Greeks, because they copied all of them and they put all this information together for all of these years, and it still doesn't even come anywhere near what one man, Darwin, did all by himself. Yeah, he didn't do it by himself, did he? He got information from other people that did it, and he compiled it all together. He compiled it, he checked it out, he made sure it fit, and he found out that, yeah, evolution occurs, and he showed the evolution that occurs that had been talked about in the Bible and in all of those other texts. And still, every stinking lying preacher that says evolution doesn't occur will sit in his very sermon and prove that it does occur. They lie and manipulate. Evolution is the changing of the alleles in a population over time. And it is proven in any population you see. They change. They change due to the fact that meiosis changes the genetic profile even within a group. So the alleles are going to change regardless. Whichever ones are more capable of reproducing and having offspring that reproduce will have the most offspring, the most descendants, and for whatever reason it is chosen, and it is not directional. Some of the pigeons that Darwin looked at couldn't fly. They were selected for because they would throw them up and they would go in circles. They'd go round and round and round and flutter down. Some of them had fantails they used for beauty. They selected them for beauty. You know it happens in nature too. Do you know in New Zealand they have birds that can't fly, they have parrots that can't fly, they have the kiwi that takes the place of the rats and the mice in the other parts of the world. In that place where they didn't have the mammals, these things took over, filled in all of the niches they were selected for. They had more offspring. They went in different directions. They had the largest eagle in the world there. In Madagascar, they had the dodo bird. Yeah, you've heard about the dodo, haven't you? It was a pigeon. Its ancestors had flown there, no longer needed to fly, lost the ability to fly, and it served other functions on the island. They also had huge elephant birds there. They also had huge birds in New Zealand before mammals got there and wiped them out by eating them at their eggs. Of course, they had those in Australia and South America too. Oh yeah, they still have the rhea. It's a tiny thing compared to the monster bird from before. Once the placentals came across, or should I call them eutherians? Once the continents connected and the placentals, the eutherians, came across, they kind of killed out the babies of some of those big giant birds, and they didn't reproduce fast enough to be able to keep up the population. And they died out. Oh, I'm sorry, they didn't die out. The rhea is still there, right? It's just not nearly as big. The ostrich is still in Africa too. But they definitely have to make more babies than those huge monster birds had to make in order to survive, because their offspring are still at risk also. And if you only make one every 2 years, you don't have much chance of surviving, do you? You have to have a more rapid reproduction if you're going to survive, and to do that, they couldn't have the size that they had before. Evolution occurs. It occurs everywhere. It has occurred in the north, it has occurred in the south, it has occurred in the tropics, it has occurred in the deserts. And by the way, with the way we are changing our climate with our overpopulation, you're going to see more of that. In fact, we've already had big changes in the oceans with our fish. We'll start having big changes on the land too. Of course, we've had that as well because we've killed out huge numbers. We've made them go extinct. We're still causing them to go extinct. And the ones that have survived have done fairly well. Because they learned how to live with us. We got rid of the wolves in the Yellowstone completely. Continental United States, not including Alaska. We wiped out the wolf population. They introduced them back. In the meantime, in the Yellowstone, the elk had been eating the aspen trees to the point that the aspen trees were about to go extinct, and the coyotes were getting larger and larger and larger, filling the niche of the wolf. They didn't have a chance to get too large because we reintroduced the wolf, and guess what happened to the big coyotes? Yeah, the wolves killed them. Guess what happened to the elk that were eating the aspen trees? They didn't want to hang around in those low areas anymore because the wolves were there catching them and killing them. Now, the aspen trees are coming back. That's because we call the wolf a keystone species. Without it, things change because it's not there keeping things in control. Of course, it may have gone back eventually anyway because the coyote may have evolved big enough to take care of it, and may have evolved to be a separate species than what it is. The same as the jackrabbits all the way from the north in Alaska are different from the jackrabbits way down south in Florida, and they have speciated. We may have had that happen with the coyotes, but it didn't because we reintroduced the wolves. Evolution occurs. Charles Darwin gave a description of evolution. It became the theory of evolution. A theory describes what occurs. What occurs are the laws. We know that changes occur in populations. The theory of evolution explains why. And nobody ever, for all of the religious nutcases trying to, nobody has ever shown that evolution does not occur. And until somebody can show that evolution does not occur, the theory of evolution stands. And will continue to stand until somebody does. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because even an idiot, even animals understand evolution. A dog understands evolution. Why is it that dogs can understand it and people cannot? What is wrong with you people?